You won't believe what this power-crazed HOA president did. After fabricating a lien and forging documents while I was out of the country, she put my entire ranch, 3 acres, a custom home, and 2 barns up for a flash foreclosure auction. She thought she'd secured a buyer, packed her bags for a victory cruise, and was already counting the cash. But she made one fatal mistake. She didn't realize I'd cut my trip short. I walked in on the auctioneer mid-sentence, the gavel hovering, and delivered the single most devastating legal blow of her life. The look on her face when the police arrived, priceless. Stick around, because this is the story of how a small-town rancher became the architect of a petty tyrant, his total downfall. Welcome back, rebels. You know the drill. If you're ready for maximum property drama, smash that like button right now, hit subscribe for more insane HOA stories, and let us know in the comments, what's the pettiest thing your HOA has ever done? Let's get this justice train rolling. My name is Ethan, and my property is the Blackwood Ranch. 3 acres of honest dirt and sunshine on the outskirts of the Willow Creek community. It's a bit rustic, a little too far from the manicured lawns for the HOA's taste, which immediately put me in the crosshairs of Eleanor Vance. Eleanor wasn't just an HOA president. She was the iron fist of Willow Creek. She ruled with a binder full of selectively enforced regulations and the smug superiority of someone who confused authority with competence. The initial conflict. It was utterly ridiculous. A classic HOA opening gambit. The visibility of my feed barrels. I keep livestock, mostly a few rescue horses and some goat sits. A small ranch, not a petting zoo, but it is my life. The feed barrels were situated behind the main barn, perfectly inconspicuous, or so I thought. Eleanor sent the first notice, an official-looking citation for unsightly agricultural clutter visible from the public thoroughfare. The fine was $50. I scoffed, moved the barrels a literal 3 feet further back, and sent a photo confirming compliance. That should have been the end of it, but Eleanor doesn't do the end of it. 2 weeks later, another notice arrived, this time for $250. Citing failure to cure the continued aesthetic degradation of the Blackwood property, she claimed the roof of the barn was non-compliant with the community's rustic chic color palette, despite the barn predating the HOA by 15 years. I responded with a polite but firm letter from my lawyer, citing the grandfather clause clearly outlined in the community's own CCR's covenants, conditions, and restrictions. This, dear viewers, was my first mistake. Eleanor Vance hated being fact-checked, especially by a rancher whose property she clearly considered a stain on her perfect subdivision. The lawyer's letter wasn't a deterrent. It was a declaration of war. Response was immediate and calculated. She initiated daily inspections. Every single day, a different, often contradictory violation would land in my mailbox. Wrong shade of mulch, excessive growth on the ivy vine I'd had for a decade. And finally, the one that set the stage for disaster. A mandatory, non-negotiable inspection of my entire property's structural integrity, citing concerns for neighborhood safety. I knew exactly what she was doing. She was building a paper trail, trying to bleed me dry with legal fees and fines until I gave up. But I had to take a major business trip to New Zealand to secure a massive equipment deal. A once-in-a-lifetime opportunity I couldn't postpone. Before I left, I informed the HOA of my absence, secured a trusted caretaker for the animals, and assumed that without me around to harass, Eleanor might cool her heels. Big mistake. Monumental mistake. As the plane took off, Eleanor Vance was already convening an emergency board meeting. A meeting I wasn't notified of. A meeting where the main item on the agenda was default assessment and accelerated lien on the Blackwood property. I left for 2 weeks thinking I'd pause the drama. I was wrong. I was dead wrong. 2 weeks turned into 26 days. The deal was complex, the travel grueling. I was relying on daily check-ins with my caretaker, who assured me everything at the ranch was fine, animals fed, nothing broken. What the caretaker didn't see, because Eleanor made sure of it, was the storm brewing in the HOA office. The mandatory inspection Eleanor had scheduled before my trip was recategorized as a refusal of entry and obstruction of official HOA business. I wasn't too late. Just as the auctioneer's hand started its final downward arc, I erupted onto the makeshift stage. Stop the sale. This is fraud. This is my property. The crowd gasped. Eleanor Vance went from a picture of serene triumph to a sputtering, beetroot red mess. She shrieked, Security, get this trespasser off the property. He is in contempt. He is in violation of the cease and desist order. I ignored her, reaching into my travel backpack and pulling out the two most important documents in the world. The first was a copy of my deed held high. The second was a document that silenced the entire crowd and shattered Eleanor's composure. A temporary restraining order complete with a judge's signature and seal. You see, on my layover in Chicago, something felt deeply wrong. I had called my lawyer, Mark, and told him about the gut feeling, the accelerated travel, the general history of Eleanor's insanity. Mark, a true legal pit bull, agreed to do some digging. What Mark found was damning. The judicial foreclosure order was based on a fraudulent service of process. The newspaper ad was insufficient, and a debt amount that was provably arbitrary. The moment he confirmed the scheduled auction, Mark leveraged my emergency return and the blatant injustice to secure not just stopping the auction, but also requiring the HOA to provide immediate access to all records pertaining to the Blackwood Ranch. The TRO was faxed to a local sheriff's department contact Mark had, and a deputy was dispatched immediately to my property, given the high stakes, likely fraudulent nature of the event. I shoved the TRO into the auctioneer's bewildered face. Read it. It explicitly forbids the sale. Any sale conducted after this order is served is null and void, and you, sir, are now an accessory to fraud. The auctioneer, a professional who clearly didn't want to lose his license, quickly scanned the document, his eyes widening with panic. Immediately announced, "The auction for the Blackwood Ranch is hereby suspended, effective immediately, pending judicial review." The crowd grumbled, but they knew a legal firestorm when they saw one. This was my victory, but the final satisfying twist was yet to come. Eleanor, refusing to accept reality, grabbed her cell phone. "I am calling the police on this trespasser. He is violating a lawful HOA order." I looked directly at the crowd, then at Eleanor, and said, "Eleanor, I am the owner. The police are already on their way. They're coming to enforce this." I tapped the TRO. Moments later, the unmistakable flash of blue and red lights cut through the night. The sheriff's deputy, a no-nonsense woman named Officer Reyes, walked straight past Eleanor, took the TRO from my hand, confirmed its validity via her radio, and then turned to the assembled crowd. "This property sale is terminated. Everyone must vacate the premises immediately." Then she looked straight at Eleanor. Eleanor's face was a study in self-inflicted destruction. The deputy didn't arrest her immediately. She did something far more humiliating. Officer Reyes informed Eleanor that she was in violation of a court order, the TRO, and that the department was now taking custody of all documents pertaining to the sale, including the forged lien affidavit and the emergency meeting minutes. Eleanor started screaming, "You can't do this. I am the president. I have authority." The deputy's response was ice cold. "You had authority, ma'am. You're currently under suspicion of criminal fraud, forgery, and misuse of HOA funds. You will step aside." The auction attendees, who moments ago were potential buyers of a bargain basement ranch, were now witnesses to the spectacular public implosion of their HOA president. One of them, a man named Mr. Henderson, who had bid $350,000, stepped forward, his face pale. "I knew that price seemed too low. I want a refund of my deposit now, Eleanor." This created a chain reaction. Everyone who had paid a deposit for the auction started demanding their money back, right there in my front yard. The sheer chaos of the moment was magnificent. The immediate fallout was swift and brutal. Within 48 hours, the HOA board panicking over the potential legal liability held an emergency vote, this time a legitimate one, and unanimously voted to remove Eleanor Vance from the presidency effective, immediately citing gross misconduct and actions likely to bankrupt the organization. My lawyer, Mark, wasn't done. The trio was just the opening salvo. He leveraged the forgery and fraud allegations to file a massive civil suit, not just against Eleanor personally, but against the HOA's insurance policy, claiming emotional distress, punitive damages, and critically all legal fees incurred from the initial feed barrel fine onward. But the sweetest part wasn't the lawsuit. It was the domino effect it caused within the community. Once the news broke, thanks to a few well-placed anonymous emails from other feed-up residents, the local news picked up the story. HOA president attempts to steal $750. K-Ranch over $50 fine. Eleanor was publicly shamed. Her husband, who clearly hadn't been informed of the scale of her obsession, quietly put their immaculate HOA-compliant home up for sale. The real payback, the one that truly cemented her downfall, came in the form of a legal letter from Mark. The judge presiding over the trial had been so appalled by the documented misuse of legal process that he didn't just void the sale. He imposed a $50,000 punitive fine on Eleanor Vance, personally payable to the court for contemptuous abuse of judicial resources. She was forced to liquidate her personal retirement savings to pay it, but I still wasn't satisfied. I needed the final nail in the coffin, the ultimate revenge. The long-term aftermath was peaceful, but my revenge was incomplete until I ensured Eleanor could never inflict her petty tyranny on anyone again. The civil suit was settled out of court, granting me a staggering six-figure payout from the HOA's insurance, which fully covered the legal fees and gave me a tidy sum for inconvenience. The HOA was forced to rewrite its CCRs, removing the abusive foreclosure clause and establishing a formal professional legal review process for all major liens. But what about Eleanor? She and her husband moved 2 states away, selling their home for a loss due to the bad publicity. I had won the battle, the war, and the financial settlement, yet the final nail was pure, sweet pettiness, a monument to her original ridiculous grievance. Mark, utilizing the public nature of the legal proceedings, discovered that Eleanor's professional life was tied to her reputation. She was a high-level real estate broker specializing in luxury community management. Mark sent a simple, carefully worded letter, along with the entire unsealed court transcript detailing her fraudulent attempt to steal my ranch. To the state's real estate licensing board, the charge was moral turpitude and breach of fiduciary duty. It took 6 months of review, but the result was absolute. Eleanor Vance's real estate license was permanently revoked. She could no longer work in the industry she loved, the industry that fueled her sense of entitlement and authority. The ultimate revenge? I didn't get her arrested for a misdemeanor. I surgically removed her ability to ever be a Karen with power again. I then took a portion of the settlement money and bought a dozen brand new, oversized, bright blue plastic feed barrels. I lined them up along the very front edge of my property, perfectly visible from the main road, and filled them with brightly colored hay, a blatant, unapologetic, and completely legal act of defiance. The new, chastened HOA board sent a notice asking me, very politely, if I would consider moving them. My response? Single, notarized photograph of my glorious blue feed barrels, signed with the single word, no. They never bothered me again. The ranch is safe, the animals are happy, and the iron fist of Willow Creek is now just a cautionary tale. Justice served, and that is how. The Blackwood Ranch beat the HOA bully. What was the most satisfying part for you? Was it the moment the gavel stopped? Was it the permanent license revocation? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into HOA insanity. We'll see you next time, Rebels.